Well, good afternoon, everyone. And as Scott said, thanks so much for coming to our Ignite series here. I know a lot of you know me in my Women's Hospital Administrator role. But really today, I'm here to talk to you about my most important role in my life, which is wife to Dick and mother to Tori and to Katie. And I'm particularly going to focus on Katie, because Katie has had a journey in her life, a special journey. And a lot of that has been here at Fairfax Hospital with some of you. So, I remember when Dick and I found out we were pregnant with Katie. We were so excited. It was such a wonderful time in our lives. I mean, not only these normal things that you worry about, like, what room, we have a new room, we can buy furniture, we can paint it, we can decorate it, all that stuff was fun. But there are other things, right, that you're focused on when you find out you're pregnant. And I'm going to stop for a minute and ask the audience, what are some of the things that if you were pregnant or you knew somebody who was pregnant, what were they focusing on when they found out or during that pregnancy? Any thoughts? Healthy baby. Gender. Names. Right. Who's the baby going to look like? Who do you want the baby to look like? I want the baby to look like me. And what's the baby, what's he or she going to grow up, right? What are they going to become? Are they going to follow in our footsteps or maybe have their own path, right? But it's true, as Rosemary said earlier, the real kind of overriding thought, though, right? I want to say the prayer that every mother says, and that every dad says, and that anybody who loves a woman who's having a baby says, the mother, the sisters, just please, please, let me have a happy and healthy baby. So I'm going to go back a little bit in time and start from the beginning and talk to you about that. So Dick and I met, we were actually in Shenandoah National Park on a trail, okay? And we met on a trail. Just a chance story, almost like you read about in a storybook. He was living in Wyoming, and I was living in New York, and we started a long-distance relationship that went on for about a year. And after that year, we decided to move to D.C. The truth of the matter is, I tried to get him to go to New York, but he would have nothing to do with that, okay? So we moved to D.C., and we had a wonderful life. I mean, we loved it here. We made new friends. We had the monuments, all the history that's here. We were traveling. Everything was great. And, we decided to get engaged and plan a wedding, and we did that. And we got married. And then we decided to have kids right away. And I got pregnant right away. I mean, it was perfect. I had a wonderful pregnancy. I felt terrific. All my tests were negative. Everything was just going great. I worked right up to the time. And like we said before, I was just so, so excited. And then we had Katie on June 5th, 1994. And she was born with red hair. Now, I come from a large Irish family. Okay, there is no bigger gift in life than to have the child, the grandchild with the red hair. And I had that child, okay? And there was only one other person in the entire family who really had red hair, and that was my dad, okay? And soon Katie was the apple of his eye, right? So Katie began her first year, but I have to tell you, it was a little, it was challenging, and it was rocky. Almost immediately they figured out she had a hiatal hernia, and they tried to treat it conventionally, and it really didn't work. And I was working at GW at the time, so she ended up over in Children's Hospital for a Nissen procedure, really to fix the hernia, and a GT tube about 4 months of age. And on top of that, she was having these ear infections, and they were chronic, and she was always on antibiotics. But despite that, she was gaining weight. Okay, she continued to gain weight with all this going on. And most importantly, she was hitting those developmental milestones that we all worry about, right? Month after month, she was staying on target. We got up to about 13 months, okay? And the pediatrician said to me, Tricia, look, she's going to be a little bit of a late walker. I think we should, start physical therapy for her. So working at GW, they sent me over to Children's, and the physical therapist was housed right next to the physician, Dr. Ken Rosenbaum, the geneticist at the Children's Hospital. So we went over for the physical therapy appointment. I actually had my 11-year-old niece from out of town. We were going to just do therapy, and then we were going to go sightsee in DC all day. It was really going to be a wonderful day. And we went in, and the therapist began her visit. And I noticed that she was repeating a few questions to me. And then I noticed she was like re-looking at her findings. So I was beginning to get a little alarmed. Okay, and she says to me, sure enough, 10 minutes later, Mrs. Schmehl, I just have a few questions I can't answer about Katie. I'm wondering, Dr. Ken Rosenbaum is right in this office, and he happens to be free right now. Do you think you can stay and have him examine Katie? Of course, what do you say? Of course, right? So we went in and he examined Katie. And after he examined her, he said to me, Mrs. Schmehl, very quietly, that's the way Dr. Rosenbaum always spoke. Mrs. Schmehl, do you think I could see you alone for a few minutes? So I said, sure. And I took Jessica, put her out in the hallway with the stroller and Katie, and told her just walk back and forth, this little tiny hallway. I said, just walk back and forth. You're in the middle of a city. Don't leave anywhere. So we went in and we sat down. And he was quiet just for a moment, and he said, well, before I tell you what he said, let me just tell you one other thing. I knew Ken Rosenbaum because of his GW days, but what I forgot to mention was that I worked with the OBGYN residents at GW, and they used to talk about this Dr. Rosenbaum all the time. They loved him. I guess he was a great teacher as well. And they used to say that he could look at a child, and without any diagnostic test at all, he could tell whether there was a serious problem with that child. So now I'm in his office, okay, as a patient, not as a colleague. And I'm sitting here waiting for him to say something to me. And he says, Mrs. Schmehl, I think we have a problem with Katie. This story never gets easier to tell after all these years, because I sat there and my heart just stopped. I couldn't believe the words. All I could picture was those OBGYN residents and what they said. That's all that was going through my head. So I finally squeaked out, Dr. Rosenbaum, I think we have a second problem then. And he said, well, what's that? And I said, I'm 8 weeks pregnant. And he said, well, you know what? And we need to get you some answers quickly. True to his word, 5 days later, I was back in that office, this time with Dick. And we sat down in the office, and he said, I'm sorry to tell you this, but we've diagnosed Katie with something called Agenesis of the Corpus Callosum. He said, basically explained it as an absence of white matter between the two hemispheres of the brain, which obviously is critical for transferring information back and forth. And he said, at a lower percentage, this agenesis is not that big a deal. But when it's a high percentage, it has grave impact. And he said hers is 90%. We call that, Tricia, a near complete agenesis. And he described that these children usually will have mild to very severe retardation, and they will have global developmental delays. Now, I'm sitting there with Dick, who's not in healthcare. Okay, so Dick says, after he says all this, Dick says to him, okay, so is Katie going to walk? And Dr. Rosenbaum says, I'm sorry, Mr. Schmehl, I don't know the answer to that. And so he says, okay, but she'll talk, right? She's going to be able to talk. And he says, I don't know the answer to that either. And so Dick's getting a little frustrated now. So he says, well, she's going to be able to feed herself. And he says, just shakes his head. And he says, I don't know. And then in sheer frustration, Dick says to him, is she going to be a vegetable? And he said, these kids are on their own path. I just cannot answer that question. So we left that day. That dream that we talked about, that prayer that you say all the time, I walked out of that office and all I could think was that prayer didn't work. I said that prayer all the time, just like every other mother, but it didn't work because I walked in with one type of baby, but I walked out with a different type of baby. So life goes on, right? And so did ours. Okay, Dick basically told both the families, the extended families were totally devastated, as you can imagine. And he basically told them, pull it together. We got to rebuild our life, and we don't need this. We need support. And they supported us. Okay, and a few months later, okay, we had Tori, who was born, I'm happy to report, very healthy. And a few months after that, I came over to Fairfax Hospital and began working in the women's hospital. We had basically started a new type of normal. So life went on, and those early years, Dick and I referred to them as the days where we were focused on fixing Katie. Now remember, Dick and I, at that time, we were basically two perfectionists. And what do perfectionists believe? They believe if you work hard enough at something, you can fix it. Okay, and we were no different. We thought we were going to do that. So we took Katie to every therapist, behavioral, physical therapy, occupational therapy, speech therapy. Okay, we brought her to every doctor, every specialist. We went to every parent meeting. We read every book. We were online. We did everything. Okay, we were exhausted. We were just traveling all around the Fairfax County traffic. I mean, it was crazy days. And then one night, late at night, after a very exhausting day with horrible traffic, we were sitting on the couch and we started talking, and we really started talking about Katie. And we realized as we was talking that Katie was really pretty happy with being Katie. And it was a big aha for us, like, wow, she's really fine with all this. It's not a problem for her. And as we started talking, we realized that the people who needed the work didn't have anything to do with Katie. It was Dick and I. That we had to change. That the old definition of perfect, it didn't work anymore. That we had to get a new definition of perfect that fit Katie, because Katie was going to be perfect. And we were going to embrace that new definition, and we did. Katie's personality had begun to really clearly emerge. She was definitely a people person. Though her speech started to really slow down what little she had, she began really speaking with that international smile. Okay, she had a very engaging smile that people they were drawn to her. She was also very good. She had great receptive learning skills, so that was helping her. But she also had challenges, right? Her attention deficit became very, very apparent. She had some problems with movement that became very obvious. She was all over the place. And she also started getting up in the middle of the night, which was really challenging. She started about 3:30 or 4 in the morning, just getting up and staying up. So that kind of kept us busy. We started bringing her almost immediately to the emergency department at Fairfax. They didn't have a PZD at that time, for the little things, the ear infections and things like that. And so we had gotten some exposure to Fairfax. My dad, who continued to dote on Katie, one day gave her a $1 bill, okay? And Katie did not play with toys. She would play with no toys. It really drove us crazy. She wouldn't play with anything. So he gave her a $1 bill, and she took that bill and she started rubbing it with her fingers, okay? And we were all in shock, and we really were watching her quite closely. And she really loved that $1 bill. In fact, she wouldn't give back the $1 bill, and she kept that $1 bill, and if we lost one, we'd have to get another $1 bill. okay? And it couldn't be a 5, a 10, or a 20. She had nothing to do with that. She wanted a dollar bill. She knew the difference, okay? And she was seen around town. I mean, you'd go to her school, and her teachers knew about the dollar bill. You go to Harris Teeter, the person at the checkout asked her where her dollar bill was. She went to the church. The usher said, "Where's your dollar bill?" Everybody knew about the dollar bill. She used to put the bill, remember she used to take the dollar bill and put it in the collection and pull it right back out. I mean, it was hilarious. So she was really, became part of her signature, okay? So life continued on, and Katie continued to have emerging medical challenges, which brought us to Fairfax. These kids have two distinct areas. One, a routine illness for a typical child sends them into a spin, and they end up hospitalized. And she ended up here on our peds unit with gastritis and GI issues. Or they start having accidents. You know, they fall and break an arm, and that happened too. So she was here coming through our emergency department for a variety of things. She also had some problems with her ears. So she was in our Woodburn, and she was in the Tower OR, and the ASC OR, and through all the PACUs. And Paula and Lalani and all those teams of people over there were taking great care of her. She moved on to high school, and I always call that the new frontier because nobody warned us about high school with Katie. They warned us about Tori, but nobody talked to us about Katie, okay? And what we did understand that these nonverbal kids who have behavior challenges, okay, and then you put hormones on top of that, that is not a good mix, okay? And add that the sleep disturbances were getting worse. So the doctors knew we were in crisis, and they were trying to help us. So they decided to do a battery of tests, and sure enough, they did labs, and they drew something called prolactin. And that prolactin level was high, which made them want to do a MRI of the brain, which they did, okay? And they had to, of course, do it under anesthesia, because Katie was absolutely not going to cooperate. So those days of testing, Dick and I refer to as the road trip days at Fairfax, okay? These kids, these special needs, come into our hospital, and they're here for the day, okay? And for us, radiology department was our hub, okay? Radiology was like home to us. We loved those people. And registration played a huge role because they had to be registered in so many areas because they had so many different types of tests happening to them. And they were wonderful. And of course, anesthesia. The CRNAs and the anesthesiologists, particularly Jeff, were just wonderful in helping us navigate from one department to the next for the whole day. We were known as a frequent flyer because what they found was an adenoma, and it was fine, they said, but it was close to the optic nerve, and they just wanted to be sure it wasn't going to keep growing. So they wanted those MRIs done every 6 months, so we kept coming back. I want to talk to you about one of those visits. Okay, now, I want to just explain, though, before I talk to you about that, is that the night before, there was a lot of activity at the Schmehl household getting Katie ready, okay? Because, of course, she doesn't understand that she cannot eat or drink the next day. So we have to remove every single cup, every bottle of water, any type of food she likes, anything in the refrigerator that she might like, and we lock it all up. And then we go to bed. And about 2 a.m., Katie would wake up. And so we'd wake up. And we'd get up, and we would try to amuse her, which was not possible, because the only thing she really wanted to do was eat and drink, right? Two things she could not do. So by 6 a.m., we'd pack her up in the car and drive to Fairfax Hospital. And we'd get to Fairfax Hospital, and we'd go into the atrium out by our escalator, because she would not go into the reception for radiology. And we would sit on the benches out there. And this particular morning, it's about 6:30. You know, it was occasional person going up and down those escalators to work, but pretty much the atrium's empty. And Katie is really frustrated this one time. So she starts moving from bench to bench to bench. You know the brown benches in the atrium? She's moving just up, down, up, down. And she gets to one of the far benches, and she starts patting her pocket, which is her way of communicating to Dick and I she's missing her dollar, because of course she came to the hospital with her dollar. So we are going all over the atrium at 6:30 in the morning, on the floor looking for a dollar bill, which we cannot find the dollar bill, okay? And she is getting louder. Because she's very vocal and she's getting louder. So I turn to Dick and I say to Dick, Dick, where'd you pack the extra dollar? And he turns to me and says, I didn't pack the extra dollar. You were going to pack the extra dollar. I said, no. Right before we left, I said to you, please pack the extra dollar. He says, no, you didn't. You said I packed the. I said, we're arguing. We're in the middle of the atrium at 6:30. Katie is escalating. I work here, and we are arguing, like having a full-blown argument, okay? So finally, we're like, okay, we don't have the dollar. So let's check our wallets. So we run, and we have our bag with us. We check the wallets. Of course, there's no dollar. So now I am totally frustrated because Katie is even louder. It's getting a little bit busy. We're seeing a few more people coming up and down the escalator. And I go over, and she's on one of the benches, and I sit down, kind of like consoling her. And I'm talking to her, trying to get her to calm down. And out of my periphery, I see someone approaching me with a gray shirt on. And as the person gets closer, I figure out it's a male with a gray shirt. But what I'm really focused on is his outstretched arm. And he's coming towards me. And I'm focusing on the arm. I'm like, what is he doing? And as I get closer, I see in his hand a dollar bill. And he says in the most gentle voice, kind of haltingly, would this help? I mean, would this help? Can I give her $1? And I'm speechless, okay? Tears are burning now because I've hit this highest level of frustration. And here is my savior just coming out of nowhere. And I don't say anything, and Katie grabs the dollar from the guy, okay? And she's focusing on the dollar, and she starts her movement and everything. And I turn to her just for a moment, just to say to her, just one moment. All I said was, Katie, say thank you to the nice man for the dollar. And I'm like bending, and I flip back, and he's gone. I mean, he's gone. And I mean, I know the atrium. I know every way to exit our atrium. And I'm looking quickly. We were in the middle of the atrium. I mean, it was not possible that somebody could get out one of those exits. And I'm looking, and he's not there. And I stand there with the tears still in my eyes. And I just stand there for a minute. And I'm like, did this just happen? And I feel this shiver just coming over me. And I remember that it was a gray shirt, and it's like, okay, the gray shirt. Oh, the white sign. Yes, he's engineering. This guy works in our engineering department. That's who he was. But I can't see his face, and I can't see his name. But the only thing I can see is his outstretched hand to me, his outstretched arm with the dollar to me. That's all I can see. I have to tell you that this is a moment of time, a moment in my life. This memory is etched there forever. I walk these halls on this campus. I go from one end of this campus to the other. That was probably 8 years ago. I see a lot of people. I see people in our engineering department. Every time I pass someone from our engineering department, I look at that person, and I wonder, are you the guy? Are you that person? And I know it feels like that particular day was somewhat spiritual to me. I know that may sound funny, but it wasn't. It really felt that way to me. And I know one day I absolutely am going to meet this guy. I don't know where I'm going to meet him. I wondered, this is going to be videotaped, or being videotaped, I guess. I wondered, is he going to be here? Is he going to see this videotape? Does he even still work here? But I don't know, but I feel like I'm going to meet him. At any rate, life continued on, and our strength as parents, I believe, was tested in many ways. Katie, as she got older, developed some medical challenges that were actually somewhat terrifying. She would get twice this happened, same type of year. She would get a medical illness, and then she would have a behavioral component, and behavioral symptoms that would come out. And we, of course, began heavily to rely on Dr. Mohajan and the Keller Center, and really, we turned to the Peds ED during these crises. And that's where we met Dr. Day, Sharon Day. And between these physicians and, of course, all the wonderful other doctors and staff, we navigated through those days. Dr. Wise was also very helpful at that time. Then, on March 3rd of this year, we got the phone call that no special needs parent ever wants to get, okay? Katie is now 23 years old, and just for a little history on the special needs kids, the ones that are severely impacted, like Katie, they stay in Fairfax County Public Schools until they're about 22, but then they have to leave. And that's like a cocoon. I mean, the school takes care of them. It's a very small environment. It's a wonderful, wonderful place for the parents when it comes to safety. Okay, you feel your children are very safe. Remember, it's very scary to have a nonverbal child who doesn't understand, who cannot tell you in any way when she goes out into the world if something has happened to her. So you're handing her over to strangers. And you have to understand that's a very frightening time. I say picking a day program for an atypical child is like sending your own typical child off to college. You lose a lot of sleep over that, right? Did we make the right decision? Is she in the right school? So we had put her in this day program, and the phone call was from the day program. And she said to me, Katie's has had an accident. So I said, okay, what kind of accident? She's broken her leg. So as a nurse, I said to her, well, what do you mean she broke her leg? How do you know it's broken? So she said, well, the EMS is here. She's on the ground. The leg is going the wrong direction, and he says it's broken. So I said, okay, I take that. I'm sure it's broken. So she says, he wants you to know that he's going to take Katie to Innova Reston Hospital. Okay? Moment of comic relief, just a moment of comic relief for me. I feel a little smile on my face, okay? Great. So I said to her, I think you mean Innova Fairfax Hospital, or maybe even Innova Fair Oaks Hospital. She's out in Chantilly. So she says, no, I said, no, really, there isn't actually an Innova Reston Hospital. So go ask him again, please, for me. So she goes, puts the phone down. She comes back, gets on. She says, he's taking her to Innova Reston Hospital. So at this point, I said to her, I know he's very busy with Katie. I know he's not going to want to talk on the phone. I'm thinking, oh my God, this EMS guy's going to kill me. But please, please, beg him, say, I just want to talk to him for a minute. So he gets on the phone, and I said to him, listen, let me tell you about Katie. She's been coming to Fairfax Hospital for 20 years. She has problems with anesthesia. She's going to end up in the OR. No matter where you bring her, we're going to go pick her up and bring her right to Fairfax. No matter what hospital you bring her to, we're moving her right away. And he says, okay, I'll bring her to Fairfax. So he brings her to Fairfax. I walk into the Peds emergency department, and I walk into her bay, and the very first person I see, Sharon Day, Dr. Day. And I stop for 1 second and say a silent prayer of gratitude, because this is the doctor who has helped us in the past from the Peds ED, and she knows Katie. I walk into the room, and Katie is looking like a child I don't even know. And the leg is obviously terribly broken. and she is not connecting with me at all. There is a nurse who's holding her leg in traction, and the doctors are there and they're discussing traction, and soon they realize, oh no, this child is not going to let us put traction on. So the nurse continues, and she continued to do that, and I believe her name was Amber, to hold that leg. And I thought, my God, later on I thought her back must have killed her. She just stood there for hours holding that. And then there's a child therapist, and her name was Cheryl, and she is reading to Katie. And Katie is slowly, every time she puts the book closer, Katie's pushing the book away. But Katie is calming down because she had been agitated, and she starts calming down. And that, I'm sure, is because Cheryl's voice is so soothing that even I'm calming down at this point. Okay? There were other people there, Lori, Shayna, Tatiana, Matthew, a host of people in and out of the room. I can't even name everybody. They were absolutely, absolutely wonderful. And then Dr. Jeff Shulman from orthopedics and Stacy from the ortho team and the residents, they come down and they say, it's a bad break. We looked at that X-ray. Her bones are very small and they're weak. And we're worried about the rod placement. And she really should have a CAT scan before she goes to the OR. But we're not sure how to do that. And it's a crazy day it's a Friday. It's a crazy 4 o'clock in the afternoon, crazy day at Fairfax. So he says, she'd have to go to radiology. It's kind of, Tricia, like a road show, he says. And I said to him very quietly, oh, we know about the road shows here at Fairfax. We know she'll be fine. And so they take her off to radiology. Remember, the department we have a lot of comfort with. And they bring her over there. Of course, the radiology people are as wonderful as usual. And there's a CRNA there. And I say goodbye to Katie there, and they put her under anesthesia. And the CRNA, I stand up to leave the room, and she calls my name, Mrs. Schmehl. And I turn around and looks me straight in the eye and says, she's going to be fine. We're going to take great care of Katie. I walk out of that room, and I hold on to those words for the next few hours. And I wonder, how can so few words make such a difference to a mother? But it did. It really did. She's in the OR. It's 4 o'clock. Our tower ORs are crazy. I'm not worried because I know that our OR staff can handle this. I know about their expertise. And she moves off. I get the word she's out of the OR. The surgery went great. She's in the PACU. And of course, the PACU staff have been dealing with Katie for years, and they do a wonderful job. And they get us up to PEDS 9. Now, for any of you who have children who've been on the PEDS unit, you actually understand this story. It's not just that the PEDS hospitalist and the PEDS residents and the nursing staff and all the staff, EVS, dietary, the volunteers, case manager, they're all wonderful. It's not just that they're all individually wonderful, but there's 2 things going on up there. One, they know how to take care of the parent. Okay, so they're taking care of 2 people. And they start taking care of me right away. And the second thing is they do it seamlessly. They do it as a team, and they do it seamlessly. And you can't see where one stops and one begins. So I'm sitting up there now, and now I have a chance to think, because we're there for 4 days. And I think, why did we send her to that day program? Why did we send her to a day program at all? We could have kept her at home. What if she doesn't walk? Now, Dr. Shulman, Jeff Shulman had said she should walk, but you are going to have to keep that leg immobilized. She's going to have to be in a wheelchair for 6 weeks. So I start thinking, Katie in a wheelchair? The kid never sits down. And there's no way to explain to her why she would need to sit down. What are we going to do? We're going to tie her up? I mean, what do you do with your daughter? We've never done anything like that before. And, what if she doesn't walk? I mean, she has such little joy in life. There's only a few things that give her joy, and one of them is movement. So all of this is going through my head as the parent, and all of this is what the nurses and the doctors meet up against when they walk in the room. And they do a wonderful job of listening and coaching and consoling that went on for the days that we were there. So we work through these anxieties, and we're able to actually leave. So the good news is, it's months later. We're in August? Katie is walking. Okay, she's back walking. We're delighted. Okay, she's out of the wheelchair. She really said goodbye to that wheelchair. You should have seen what she did when she got out of it. She was quite happy. She's a little balance problems. Okay, a little bit of balance, but we're working on that. But she's really doing well, and we're delighted and very grateful about that. I want to just do a few acknowledgments. I can't come up here without doing that at all. I work with Patrick, and I worked with Ron Ebol for many years, and of course the entire admin council team. And it's a group of people who are very quietly present, okay? Whenever I need anything, they are there. Whatever is going on, they always have a kind word. It's the type of support that you always want from your coworkers. And I've gotten that all these years. It's just wonderful. And I work in the women's hospital, right? And I believe I work with the most wonderful nursing staff, and I've been working with them for many years. And they are so special. Their random acts of kindness over the years have kept me going on many, many, many times a hard day. Rita will stop by and tell me that she's just said some prayers for Katie. Abina makes food for Katie every once in a while. A number of years ago when I was here overnight, one time when I was here overnight with Katie, Sherry Iacey, one of our nurses, came up, and she was on her night break, and she said, "You go to bed. I'm going to walk Katie around this floor. You go to bed. You need some rest." They are always there, and all the kindness they bring to our patients, they have showered as well on me. The physicians, the women's physicians, Larry and Al and Glenna and Derry and all of the OBGYNs, they've met Katie. They're so good with her over the years as they interact with her, and they're always very supportive. And there have been other physicians. Bob and Glenn from the ED have been awesome, as well as Dave Asher and pediatrics. He's always been a listening ear for me. But probably the most, number one, the team that really has come through for me time and time again is my women's hospital team, the women's leadership team with Janet. These guys are my rock. During the days when times are great, they keep me laughing, and they keep working, and they're always giving 200%. But when times are hard with Katie, they're there. They're there in two ways. They're actually physically there, like showing up and doing things for me. And when they're not there, they're here because they know how important it is for me, for the women's hospital to keep moving forward. And they will do whatever it takes. And that's what happened in March when I was out. I went out and it was seamless. They just took over. So thank you, guys. So in conclusion, I know I talked earlier about how Dick and I and our definition of perfection changed and being perfect. In the hospital, right? Scott knows this. We talk about perfect care all the time. And we talk really about zero harm when we talk about perfect care. But you know what? Dick and I have a different definition of perfect care at Fairfax. It's taking $1 and giving $1 to a child who's very anxious. Okay, it's reading a story when somebody keeps pushing the book away, and you keep reading anyway because you know it's the right thing to do. It's not only fixing the broken leg, but it's taking care of that parent who has to deal with the trauma of what has happened and trying to figure out how to communicate this to her daughter who wants to walk but will not be able to. Perfect care is what you guys do each and every day you come to Fairfax Hospital. Okay, Dick, Tori, Katie, and I We've seen that perfect care because it's the Innova Promise in action. We've seen it firsthand with the care that Katie has gotten. Long before the words to the Innova Promise were written, and long before it was sent out across the Innova health system, we understood what the Innova Promise was. Each and every opportunity to individualize, that was Katie that was getting the individual care. Every time and every touch, that's been the last 20 years for us. So thank you for living the Innova Promise with our Katie. You will never understand how absolutely grateful we are. And we want you to understand that we keep you in our prayers each and every day. And we'd like to take this moment to wish you and your families all the best that life has to offer. Thank you so much. Thank you.
My name's Heather Russell, and I'm the Vice President of Innova Heart and Vascular Institute, and it is absolutely a privilege to be sitting up here with Trish. We have worked together since 2004, when we were both nursing senior directors.
Nursing senior directors.
And when I look back on all those years, it just amazes me what a phenomenal job you do here as a leader, what a sense of calm you always have in many disastrous situations we have faced over the year.
We've had a few.
Including the Epic Go Live, which you handled beautifully. And I think what you've been through with your family really has also helped with your leadership here, because you always have a sense of calm, always in the most dire and desperate situations. So I really look up and appreciate that from you.
Thank you, Heather.
So with all that you're dealing with at home every day, and then coming into this work setting, which can be quite chaotic at times, how are you able to handle the stress of both and come in here and never know that you have such a interesting situation at home?
Yeah, so, just like you guys, when I come into Fairfax, Fairfax just eats you up and swallows you up. You get here, and there's so much going on, and there's so many people who are so passionate about what they're doing, you just can't help but dive in. I mean, life, right? Life at Fairfax is just a very special place. That actually works really well for me, because sometimes at home, I don't want to remember about home. I want to leave it behind, so I get to do that. I get to come here, and I get to be saturated with Fairfax for hours. But then when I leave, when I get home, Katie does not allow. There's only one thing that can be going on, and that's called Katie time, okay? And I forget where I work, what I do. I forget what the problem was when I left until I walk back in, basically the next day.
Sounds like you figured out how to make a balance of two chaotic worlds.
That's right. That's right.
Well, we really want to take the opportunity now to open the floor up for questions from the audience. We've only got a few minutes left. Does anyone have any questions for Trish? Yes.
How do you spread your time from Katie to your
Good. I should let Tori answer that. So that's a great question. The special needs families, a lot of literature has been done on us, and we're rather dysfunctional. We basically do spend a lot of our time around the special needs child. And Tori was brought up in that way. So Tori, as a very young kid, 10 or 11, was actually already taking care of Katie. And we ended up hooking up with a place called Jill's House, which built in some respite time. And only until we were there were we able to have really quality time with Tori. So it was an interesting and challenging journey for us, and particularly for her. Yeah. Good question, though.
Any other questions? It's really hard for us to see up here. The
Yeah.
lights are bright.
Trish, do you spend some time to make yourself happy? Like, what do you do? I have seen you walking around the hospital at the end of the day sometimes, but is there any exercise or meditation or something that you makes you so powerful and get going?
Yes, that's a great question. I do love to walk, and I do walk around the campus because sometimes, like I was saying earlier, when I get home, you know, there is no time. But I love to walk, and I work out. I think that's really important for the stress level. And I also, you know, we plan weekends away. Tori and I were just up in New York. Got to see, what did we see? Kinky boots, which I loved. So we plan time away, but it does need to be planned because we got to worry about the caregiving situation.
Any other questions?
Trish,
Yeah.
did you ever think that this is just too much? I can't do this. I mean, you have a very busy job. How did you cut it? You've got great support system here, but
Right.
think of stepping back.
Yes, I always said that if I didn't love coming to work, I would have to do something else because I don't think this life would have worked if I didn't love my job. Okay, and there were times I only kind of liked my job, and those are the times I said, are you sure you want to go to work? You know, or you want to do something else. But I think it was very key to have a job. I feel I've been very lucky that I've had a job that I really do enjoy. But sure, there were times, and I think you always weigh that back and forth.
Okay, Trish, do you want to introduce your family?
Yeah, so I'm happy to tell you that both Dick and Tori are here today. So if you guys could stand up. Yeah. And if you could be patient just for one moment and maybe just watch the screen. We actually have Katie here, but we're not sure how she's going to react with the crowd. So she may come in. There she is. Hey, Katie. Okay, thank you all for coming.
Well, thank you, Trish, very much, and nice to meet you, Katie. Well, I want to thank you all for coming to another Ignite Talk. These talks, I know that Molly and her team and the AV team have put a lot of work and thought and practice and rehearsal into. So your feedback is really important because we want to make sure these continue to be as meaningful as the one today. Please fill out your evaluation card, and please join us for our next Ignite series talk. Thank you so much, and have a great day.